mature because of like explosions and sex and violence and you know, people yelling fuck, and he's like, that's not mature. He's like, that is fundamentally immature. That's 15-year-old boy stuff. And he's like, it's fine, but I want to see someone try to make Hamlet into a video game, or The Little Prince. What? Oh, I was just like, yeah, all right. I thought you were.
Most people clap.
Yeah, it's all good. That would have been unmistakable. Genova's whole idea was, you know, I want to make something that you could maybe, like, you know, his ultimate model would be like a Pixar film, where you can watch it as a kid and probably enjoy it, but if you watch it as an adult, it will have an entirely new and far more resonant meaning. That was what he really wanted to do. And he started on that with Flower, but then with Journey, it was overtly the goal of, I want to make an emotional experience that's real, that's actually, that can crawl into your life and maybe mean something to you. And so he had two different ways he was pursuing that. One is he wanted the game to be the Joseph Campbell hero's journey in one big visual metaphor. So, you know, we had both read The Hero of a Thousand Faces. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's amazing. The crash course on Joseph Campbell, if you don't know, is that he was the world's first comparative mythologist. And what that meant is he basically went into a cabin in the woods for like 10 years and read every book about every culture and every religion that he could get his hands on. And then in doing so, he discovered, holy shit, every single culture on Earth is telling the same exact story, just with their own names in and their own map locations in. But it's the same thing over and over. And he called it the hero's journey. It's also referred to as the monomyth. And so, you know, and of course, once he wrote a book about it that was very popular in academic circles, and a young filmmaker read that and was like, wow, this is great material for really helping me structure my screenplay idea. So he went and made his little $3 million movie that was way over budget, way past schedule, and ended up making like $300 million at the box office in 1977 called Star Wars. And when George Lucas started getting hammered with the press and they were like, where did you come up with this script? He said, well, there's this guy's book I read named Joseph Campbell. And so Joseph Campbell, like little quiet professorly type, suddenly his phone started ringing off the hook and they're like, you realize you're a celebrity all of a sudden. And he became, you know, this world famous person, and virtually every screenplay ever is heavily inspired by his work. Genova, having studied cinema and storytelling at USC, wanted to try to really take those archetypes and pull it into a game. So that was goal number one with Journey. Goal number two, which is the real thrust of it, is I want to take two people and have them actually have a meaningful relationship with one another. And he says, you know, because if you're online and you're playing League of Legends with someone, that's not exactly this like deep interpersonal thing that you're having. It might be your best friend and you're like sitting there, you know, chatting through your headset, but at best it's like friendly, you know, like competition. And he said, I really want to make something that's transcendent of that. I want to try to make something that really makes two people feel like you actually made a difference in my life for this little span of time. And he had ideas about how to go about it, but initially it was like, that is a really ambitious goal, dude. And I remember I said to him, I was of course instantly excited, where I thought, I've been a gamer my whole life, and I'm realizing I've been waiting my whole life for someone to make that game. And I was instantly just electrified. And I said, I don't know how you're going to do this, but if you do, I feel like you'll be making my favorite game ever as a gamer. And so we got together the next day to start talking a little bit more logistics. And he said, I'd like if you wrote a theme that could sort of form the emotional, as an emotional summary of all these ideas we've been talking about. He said, so why don't, you know, he said, we're going to start making concept art soon. And again, the game wasn't even greenlit yet by Sony. Flower had just come out. And you know, so to be involved at the ground floor like this was exceptionally rare, and as it turned out, essential. And so he said, why don't you come up with a theme that kind of summarizes these ideas, take a week or two, we're going to start making concept art, and we can kind of send stuff back and forth and just sort of try to get on the same page. And this never happened to me before, but I would like, you know, from that door to the, you know, this wall is about how far it was from the exit of the building. We were meeting just inside, and then my car was parked out here. And in that span of that walk, it hit me. I've never had this happen like that before. It literally felt like someone just smacked me. And so I left myself this voicemail, like, okay, start with a solo cello, you know, I spelled it all out. And it was, I'm sure, the most horribly awkward voicemail of all time. But, and then, what? Please tell me that's next recording. Oh, that's long since vanished into Verizon's endless matrix. You know, their studio is on a totally other, it's like a 25-mile drive from my studio. So I had, like, you know, I was like, I'm going to be in traffic for an hour. And so I called my cellist, a girl named Tina, and I called a flute player I worked with named Amy, and I said, can you guys meet me at the studio in like 2 hours? I want to record this today. And they were like, okay. And so I race that. I have just enough time to write it out. And you know, it's very simple, obviously. I think really anybody could have written this. It's meant to be very, very simple. And it's meant to be melodically of a sort that in a very unaccompanied way it can work. And this is how I'm kind of leapfrogging off of that last subject of the idea of like grabbing these musical tropes, because I knew that Genova was really keen on the idea of a beautiful lonesomeness. That was what he was really interested in. Is he said, I want this world to be beautiful and lonely at the same time. So don't confuse that with sad. It should not feel sad. It should feel lonely, but in a I don't feel sorry for myself kind of way, in a way that just feels like you're very aware of being alone. Because that was his strategy, is he said, if we make this environment inviting and beautiful, but one which makes you feel very small, then maybe if we sort of put you in this place for a good while, alone, and then we open up the system to connect you with someone else, someone emerging up over a sand dune will suddenly be really exciting, because we have worked so hard to make you not, to make you feel alone and sort of almost disconnected. And so, apparently that was really clear musically when he described that. And so I went and I wrote and recorded that theme, which 3 years later I called Nascence. I literally recorded that day, sent it back to them, sent it to Sony, and everyone was like, yeah, this seems to be it. And let's just move on. Which is nice, you know. And so they then made a trailer. This is, I don't know if this is on, I don't think this is on YouTube. It's probably not that hard to find, but it was never really published, because this was the internal pitch trailer that they made to get Sony to greenlight the game, where they took my piece of music and then they took the concept art they had just started making and added a little tiny bit of animation to it. So, you know, this recording of the cello and the bass flute was 4 years ago, and I never re-recorded them. This actual thing plays like when you fire up the game on the cross-media bar, and it's the first track on the soundtrack, which has never happened to me before, that something could actually survive that much time and scrutiny. The difference is the harp is not real here. The harp was sampled, but was later re-recorded and swapped out, and the strings that come in you know, day one of working on Journey. And it was supposed to be about a year still to go. Now, you've probably seen this, but it's always fun to do a juxtaposition of then what happens when we launch forward three years.
Okay. Boban, we are connected? Okay, we are connected with Hugo.
I think there's a lot of people online that think that the guy conducted
Austin Wintory, The Journey, Session 1.
hear how the music progressed over those 3 years and yet didn't. Recorded the score and already implemented it into the game, and we were just doing final details, and they said, will you help edit together the music for a music trailer? And I was like, what is a music trailer? Apparently that's a music trailer. That's an actual trailer they used to try to sell the game using the music, which was mind-blowing. So I want to play you a few little bits from the actual score. Let's see here. Where? Here. So I said the third big thing that I need to be aware of as a composer is arcs, musical arcs, and creating arcs as a storytelling device. And there's a few different ways in which to do that. So first, actually I'll just play you this so you can hear it because it's funny. The music evolved a ton because the game evolved a ton. And it took me a long time to really figure out exactly what it needed to be. Because they were trying to find the game and the exact tone of it. And so, like, the desert, which is what all that footage from the trailer by and large comes from, is the kind of opening. It's technically the third out of 8 sort of stages in the game. But it's sort of the most visually iconic and memorable looking. And it was also a big emotional turning point because the first time you connect with another player, and it needed to feel very kind of like youthful and innocent, and it's kind of like a metaphor for childhood. And so the very first music that I wrote for it sounded like this. This is my mock-up, obviously, because I threw this out because it's horrible. I mean, the thing was barely playable. This is like, this music's 2.5 years old. No, wait, more than that. Because it was 4 years when I started, so this is probably 3.5 years old. So you were all like 4 years old when and so you can see it's like, but you know, you can hear I'm playing around with ideas. To me, I hate this because I'm like, how fucking cliche to go in this kind of Arabic percussion direction because it's the desert. Like, terrible, terrible idea. And I quickly realized that's a terrible idea. So my second pass, I said, you know, this needs to be about movement. This needs to be about almost dancing. The game started to evolve into this almost ballet-like quality. So this was my second sort of, actually bear in mind, there's a million drafts between these, but these are kind of like the highlights that I would, you know, they're the least torturous for me to. So I started to really feature the harp a lot. So this is the exact same area of the game, but you can it's a totally different approach. It is and it isn't. Very simple still, and very kind of performance oriented. And it's obviously all samples, that's not a real harp. But I did record everything live, so these are just the mock-ups. So eventually that evolved into this. It's getting mad at me for trying to open 2 files. Jump the gun. So this is what is actually in the game. So you can hear, like, there are traces of all those previous ideas, but I finally figured out, like, what this dancing sort of simple freedom needed to feel like. And the big part of nailing this tone, which is a general lesson for video game composing in general, is that it's all interactive. The music is deeply interactive in context, but even if it weren't, a player is driving this experience, which means that I don't regard what I'm doing as being a composer and it's like you, my audience, have the gift of listening to my music. That's totally wrong. I see it as us actively collaborating in the moment. And games offer a very unique way to achieve that. That's different from any other medium that has ever existed. I'm going to probably talk about that more later. But I really want to focus on the broad arcs, because to me that was really, really hugely important. So if you listen to music from the very, very beginning of the game, it sounds like this. It's basically totally electronic. It's a very organic type of electronic. It's not like dubstep or something. But it's but this is all other than like the bass flute solo that you're hearing. This is all stuff that I made by just manipulating things, or I would record things and then manipulate those recordings and create an electronic aesthetic. So I wanted the game to start off very primal feeling, so that by the time you then get to, say, the middle of the game, it starts to become a little bit more kind of traditionally instrumental and orchestral. So like here you hear featured, this is from like right smack in the middle of the game, when you're in the underground kind of cave. And the harp is quite prominent now, the electronics are still very present, and then you also notice the orchestra is starting to sneak its way in. But you notice they're playing aleatorically, so they're not playing together, so that the orchestra kind of sounds like the electronics. So that it's a real, and mind you, I'm just like jumping with hour-long gaps between these, but it's supposed to be a real smooth and steady transition. So that by the time you get to the end of the game, when it becomes this, you've actually earned this. This actually has significance because you've not just jumped right onto it, and you didn't try to score the whole game this way. And that to me is really, really, really important. You have arcs within scenes, within moments, but you have to also be looking at the big picture and saying, what is the grand scope of everything I'm trying to say? Because I don't think that this music would mean anything if I didn't see it as the end destination and very carefully, like a game of chess, plot to arrive at it that way. And so the amalgamation of those three basic principles, crafting these arcs moment by moment and on a large scale, things like having no orchestra, then bits of orchestra, then eventually becomes like pretty traditionally, more or less, orchestral. But it's always about arcs. Taking advantage of what are these known musical tropes and icons. And then obviously the first point I made about just the fact that it's carrying the subtext to begin with. I do want to show you one moment in the game. I have this one enormous quick time of the entire game. And there's a moment that, it's like, it's the most visually amazing moment in the whole game. It's the, I used it for the soundtrack cover, and I like to show this because to me you can see how moment by moment contextual relevance is really important. And so I work really hard to make the scores really, hopefully, elegantly interactive. So you'll notice player jumps off, you get Tina shredding on her cello. And then, it will always work. Always fundamentally not what a composer is supposed to do. My goal is to invite you into a space that allows you to feel whatever you like. Now, of course, I am telling a story, so it's not like 100% freedom. I do want you to go through an emotional arc, but I do want you to feel like you are choosing this, and it's not a manipulation. So obviously, all that energy. I was talking through it. It didn't, whoa, I just jumped like an hour back. I forgot how long this file is. The transition out of the energy into this more contemplative thing happens right here. And it will always sound, my goal is always that it should be just like this, where if I were to make a video capture of someone playing a game, it should almost look like a film score, scored later. Except that 10 people would have 10 different film scores on their video. So that's why I always feel bad autographing stuff, because this imagery it's really astonishing. So you'll notice, of course, again, it's quite simple. To demonstrate the importance of knowing the context of what the music is going to be heard in is so hugely important. And I don't want to show any more of the game, because if you haven't played it, if only for your benefit, if you're the only one here who hasn't played the game. It's just a really special and emotional kind of thing, and bizarrely so almost. All right, I've been yammering for a long time. I want to answer questions, but I want to end with something. Like I said at the very beginning, hopefully it doesn't quite feel like bullshit when I said I don't actually think what I do is write music. What I think I do is use music as a tool, as just my particular skill set, ever evolving skill set, and hopefully improving, to manifest the world in which I want to live. And I don't mean I think the world is better off with this music in it. That would be horrendously narcissistic. What I mean is that I want to take part in creating a world in which I am able to actually meaningfully connect with other people. And it can actually be something as ridiculous as Monaco or Leisure Suit Larry, or something like Journey. And I've felt that way my whole career, but never did I experience what that can actually be like to the degree until Journey. And like I said, it came out a little over a year ago, and it's been an unimaginable experience this past year. And not because of all the craziness with the awards and all of that stuff. That actually all came much later. And that's all, you never do it for that reason. And it wouldn't need any of those to have changed this experience. Of course, it's always flattering and it's an honor, but the real meat of it is, like, for example, the letters. We started to get letters. I would get them lumped in with the whole team, and then I also got a lot of letters just to me, which was unimaginable, because I was not, this isn't a concert in which you are all playing a game. It's a game. And obviously the music is kind of the only thing that you really hear in the game, because the sound design is pretty subtle, generally speaking, and there's no dialogue or anything. So I am kind of positioned in an unusual way, much like a silent film, ironically. The letters that started to come were not, hey, awesome job on the music, I really liked it. I mean, actually, there were a lot of those, and it's very nice. And I actually would always write back, and actually I try. I mean, I have about 700 unreplied to emails. Even with my attempts to stay on top of it, it's still built up to, like, there's some that literally got over a year ago that I still haven't gotten to, but I refuse to delete them or to like uncheck them as being unread so that I will respond. Because I'm like, someone took the time to do that. That's actually, even if it literally is just like, thumbs up, dude, that actually is something they didn't have to do. It took energy for them to do that, and it needs to be acknowledged. But the crazy thing is that's not even the kind of letters that we mainly get. The kinds of letters that have been coming were people saying things like, you know, I struggle with depression, and even to the extent of I've gotten lots of, not one or two, like kind of, I don't even remember how many emails from people that are like, I have had medical issues with being suicidal, and this game basically took all of the sort of human bullshit out of the equation and let me feel like I was just connecting with a person without any externalities. I don't, you know, because you don't know how old they are, you don't know where they are, what languages they speak, or anything like that. You just know that it's another person, and that, far beyond anything any of us ever expected, ended up being a catalyst to a really, really emotional experience for people, especially. And this is why I say my goal is not to try to manipulate you into feeling a certain way. I don't think a composer that's doing that is probably not a very good composer, because I don't think you can convince someone to feel anything. But if someone is primed and you invite them, those that want to and that are ready for it will, those that aren't won't. And it's okay in both cases. This ended up being the ultimate exploration of that I could never have anticipated. I mean, one email that I got in particular, I get this email, I actually got it sent to me through YouTube, through like, you know, the YouTube email system that I didn't even know really existed until I just started getting emails from every imaginable way that I can get them, through Facebook and through Twitter and through certainly, you know, my email address is just on my website, and then things like this, you know, SoundCloud, you can message people all these different ways. And there was this one where this girl wrote, and she said, and it was like 100 pages long. I mean, it was like her whole life story, and it was so elegantly written, in which she said that, you know, a year ago, whenever the email came in, she says, you know, a year ago, my father was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4, which is, you know, you're pretty much not coming back from that. And so her whole life, one of the ways in which she and her dad had bonded was by playing video games. And so when he found out how he was sick, they like kicked into overdrive and really wanted to capitalize on whatever little time was left. So they started playing a lot of games, and they were playing the releases of the time, which was like Skyrim and things like that. And at some point, though, the cancer started to progress where it was making him motion sick, and he just was feeling so crappy all the time that they had to kind of stop. And she was really devastated because she felt like this was the first really tangible sign that he's about to die, because this thing that has been the foundation of so much of our bond has just been removed, and we can't do it anymore. And totally out of nowhere, she just happened to, someone mentioned or something, Journey. And so she downloaded and was like, I actually think that he might be able to handle, like, this seems like he'd be okay. And it was, and they played through the game, and they had this like really meaningful experience together. And she didn't say this, but what we have seen again and again, which was something we never thought of when we were working on the game, was that because it's such an anonymous experience, people have a tendency to imprint on the other player someone meaningful to them. And we got a lot of emails from people saying, you know, I lost my mother, I lost my brother, I lost my father, etc. And they would play the game, and unintentionally, without realizing what was going on, they saw that other player as that person. And then they would go through this experience with them, and they would feel like they just shared something with them, even though they know intellectually it's not them. Their heart does not know. And they would have, in some cases, profoundly life-changing experiences. So I suspect, while sitting there playing this game together, this is what was happening with her. But even if not, just the act of playing with her dad on this twilight of his life ended up really, really meaning a lot to her. And so then, of course, inevitably, very shortly after that, he died, and she like couldn't touch games for a few weeks or a month or however long, where she couldn't even, like, it was just unthinkable to her because it was something that they did, that she did. And eventually, though, she just decided on a whim to play Journey again, and suddenly she found herself in this place of feeling like he was permanently with her. And she was, you know, in her family, like she was sitting there playing the game. It's just tears streaming down her eyes and her face, and her family doesn't really get it. But she's like, you know, just retreating into this very personal space and having this like captured moment that she could revisit over and over, and it had become something extremely meaningful. And so she, you know, she said, you know, things like, you know, you read these stupid Hallmark cards that say things like, you know, the people that you love never leave you, and that sort of thing. And then through a video game, of all things, she realized actually that as stupid as those cliches usually are, there's actually truth to it. Because I feel it, I see it in a way that's actually real. And she ended her email by saying, you know, my name is Sophia, I'm 15 years old, and I'm never going to be the same because of this game. And I could not believe what I couldn't believe a 15-year-old could have the depth of emotional understanding that, I mean, you should see this email. I mean, it was like, it was a novel, and it was so beautifully written. And it's crazy because it's like 1,000 more came like it. And of all these different stories and all these different things, and it was one of those experiences where I realized you really can make the world, you can aim at making the world a better place. The thing is, it's not up to you though. Like, I don't think I actually did any of those things. I refuse to take credit for something that monumental as the kind of emotional experiences that these emails have suggested. To me, it was that I succeeded in creating a place in which someone could go in and feel their own experience and feel their own sort of journeys. And that is the highest level of success that I could have hoped for. And so, you know, you'll never see me saying, you know, oh, that great music did that. I don't believe that. I don't, first off, know if it's great or not. It's not possible for me to assess quality of my own work. But more than that, I don't want to take credit for that, because I want to believe the world in which I want to live, which I use music to try to create, is a world in which people are able to feel these things, and people are able to have real experiences that are actually something they can take with them for the rest of their lives and actually really carry them forward in a way that's just going to make them like this positive beacon, that they are the better for it, and so therefore everyone around them is the better for it, which means everyone around them are the better for it, and you can actually substantively change the world by enabling people to change it themselves. So now that I've totally bummed you all out, I would love to answer any questions that you have about anything. Yeah?
Sure, if you like want a bottle of water or something.
Oh, I'm good. I would be doing this whether you guys were here in the room or not.
This other question has absolutely nothing to do with that. So,
all water-related questions, please.
I don't think I can construct this question in that way. So I'm one of the many people here who's in GSO. We're playing Journey tomorrow, and I hope we do it justice. The question I have
a whole response to that, but I want to hear your question.
what do you, as a composer, get out of, I mean, bringing your music to a situation like that? I mean, we don't have any money to give you. We don't have really any means of tangibly compensating you. So what is it for you that this environment that we have, what does it bring for you? What do you get out of it?
It's a continuation of everything I was just saying. That you playing this music before an audience means that there's a chance someone in that audience will actually take something that they can carry with them. It doesn't matter to me what that is. It could include hating the music. It can. If they have something that means something to them, they are actually moved in any way, then I have surpassed my goals. And I also am very, I work a lot in the educational world. And I do talks like this a lot, and I do I sit on the board of an education nonprofit in LA where me and a bunch of other composers work together to put music in elementary schools, because LA's school, the LA Unified School District in particular, is just a disaster for arts education. And so I spend a lot of time as a board member doing that, working to that, and work with other composer colleagues of mine, and doing general stuff in that world, which we can talk about if you want. But point being though that being involved in educational environments in particular, I really like all aspects of kind of the ways in which music allows for outreach. Like I like doing pre-concert lectures with just a general audience, and I like doing, like I've done adult education classes at like colleges and things. So that it's not just this environment, but this is definitely what I do the most of, is wanting to come before students, who are at a point in their life which I remember being at very tangibly, and hopefully making them realize that I haven't done anything with my life that not anybody else could do. I really don't believe, like when people like to say, people say very flattering and meaningful things about, if they like the music, or you're talented, blah blah blah. I don't really actually listen to any of that, because I'm a very scientifically minded person. I can't empirically verify anything that they're going to say. So first off, it's like, well, thank you. I appreciate the spirit of what you're saying, even if I can't actually believe it. I have to be skeptical, especially because if I started to believe I was great, then the music would immediately suffer, and therefore my whole point and my whole goal would be gone. So specifically though, addressing your question, to me, entering into an educational environment and telling students that all I'm doing is being like that flypaper, and just going out into the world and just trying to find things that mean something to me, and they'll take on different meanings, and some things will be big and some will be small, and some things, like I have a whole spiel that I give about what art is. And I have two forms of art. There's art with a lowercase a and art with a capital A. I'm always trying to make something that would be art with a capital A, meaning you don't need me to appreciate it. I want to be removed from the equation. It's exactly the same as science. E = mc squared works because you don't need Einstein to explain it to you. It works on its own. And it will take on new meaning to people as they use it and recontextualize it and do all sorts of things with it in their own way as they move forward in time. To me, the greatest works of art, what if I did like a dubstep remix of... It might be interesting, not because it's an unexpected remix, but because these notes somehow have fundamental truth in them. They are the tip of the spear point of art with a capital A, as proven by the fact that they have survived more than 200 years since they were written. That is always the fundamental goal of what I do, and I don't think that, like, I own the copyright on that. I think all of you could do that, and I like to try to impress that upon you, because I could die on my flight home to LA. I have no idea how long I'm going to be in this world, which means you have every single day is an opportunity that you must take advantage of to achieve whatever it is that you want to do. I'm very